Welcome to the Secure Connections podcast, a weekly cybersecurity discussion presented by IoTSSA, the Internet of Things Security Services Association. As always, I'm your host, Brian Sherman, Content Director for Get Channeled and IoTSSA, and today I have the privilege of speaking about awareness training with Art Gross, founder of Secure Now. Art is one of those multi-dimensional and long-tenured channel professionals. In addition to leading the Secure Now team, he is CEO and co-founder of Integration Inc., a nearly 2-decade-old New Jersey-based MSP focused on the healthcare industry. In 2010, his team created a security training program to help other service providers increase their clients' information security and regulatory compliance. Those offerings have grown and now include Breach Secure Now and HIPAA Secure Now, and encompass dark web breach assessments, simulated phishing, security risk assessments, policies, continuous weekly training videos, and monthly newsletters for end users. I'm sure we'll go into in-depth on some of the various options for each. Art honed his compliance skills at Merck, leading business system development and managing the company's emerging technology architecture, and earned an undergraduate degree from Penn State University and an MBA from Farley Dickinson University. Welcome to the Secure Connections podcast, Art.
Thanks, Brian. It's a thrill for me to be here, and I'm very excited to talk to you. And I love what you guys are doing with IOSA. I actually was able to attend an event in New Jersey at Topgolf, and you guys have an incredible show, and the content was great. So I'm thrilled to be here.
Awesome. We were happy to host you. And it's a lot of fun when we do the live events and all the activities we do. But let's get into some of the discussion today, because we got a lot we want to talk about, especially in the security awareness. There's so many questions in the channel about this, and we want to make sure we spend enough time. But let's talk about yourself a little bit. When did you decide to become an MSP? Can you give us kind of a brief overview of how you got into tech?
Sure. So as you mentioned, I worked at Merck. I worked at Merck for 16 years out of college. I was always in the networking. I started as a programmer. I was in networking, and always had a side business. Always, working with SMBs and doing some network support. In 2000, I left Merck and started, co-founded Integration. As you said, it was a New Jersey-based MSP. Back then, we were an IT company. We transitioned to an MSP. And 18 years later, I'm still running the MSP. So, it's been an exciting ride, and it's a unique perspective to be both an MSP and also to run a channel security company as well. So, I love talking to our partners. I feel a lot of their pain and of what with clients and the questions they have, because we still do that. We still are very active with our MSP, and we're also, as you mentioned, a security company.
Did you find that being on the technical side of the business in Merck early on and working technology, the entrepreneurial part just was calling you to come create something?
It was. In fact, I was in network architecture. So, I was always involved in selling the next technology. So even within Merck, I was still very strong technology, but I had to convince the business area that they should invest in those technology solutions. So in a way, I was always doing what I'm doing now, but in a larger company. And, so that kind of led me to starting that MSP and being that entrepreneur.
Makes perfect sense. So you were an MSP, you're at Integration, doing very well from what it sounds like. And was there a single event that caused you to decide to develop an awareness training offering? Or did you just decide to take advantage of, the market opportunity? What was that?
No, so majority of our clients are healthcare. We back in 2005, we positioned Integration as an MSP that supported healthcare, not because I knew that healthcare was going to be the epicenter of the economy, but it was our way of differentiating ourselves. And, as I mentioned, we had mostly healthcare clients. And then in 2009, the HIPAA High-Tech Act came out. And I realized that none of my healthcare clients ever talked to us about HIPAA. So I kind of assumed that no one's really doing anything with HIPAA back in 2009, 2010. And we built the service that turned into HIPAA Secure Now. When they say when you build a really good product, they'll come. Well, nobody came. We couldn't sell HIPAA Secure Now for anything. So we started, I was a nut banging the drum, HIPAA's coming. So we started working with other IT companies, other MSP, building a channel program. And I kept getting feedback. We really love what you're doing with HIPAA, with security risk assessments and policies, and especially with the training. But I have a lot of non-healthcare clients. Can you help us? We kept saying, no, we're HIPAA only. We're, HIPAA experts. And then eventually the requests just kept coming. And we wound up building Breach Secure now to focus on the employee element, the non-technical element. And that's where the security awareness really started to pick up. And that is now exploding from a growth point of view. So really it was the MSP to HIPAA to healthcare, from healthcare to HIPAA, then from HIPAA to Breach Secure now, which is a general security and more focused on security awareness training.
I still have in my mind, I can see you running through like Paul Revere saying HIPAA is coming, but that's just a visual.
Yeah, you had to. And back then, it was, I was doing the things I didn't do for the MSP. I had to start to do content marketing and inbound marketing and starting to, position myself as an expert in HIPAA. But, it's kind of funny. You fast forward 8-9 years now, and, you can't read anything without reading about HIPAA and how important that is. So, it's good to be ahead of the curve, but it's extremely frustrating, because you want to sell solutions, but no one's ready for it at that time. But, so that's my life. A very frustrating, being ahead of the curve in technology over and over. But, here we are.
And the awareness training is a much different animal, I should say, than the technology itself, although you've incorporated both within your offering. But I guess we've come a long way in the last 9-10 years as far as compliance, to where people wanted to avoid it, but now they really can't. And it's become that differentiator with managed service commoditization and other things. It seems like it's a real way for MSPs to be able to differentiate. But why should MSPs offer awareness training itself?
Yeah. That's a great question. For the first part is, and you said it, MSPs love technology, right? We love the latest firewall, the next generation antivirus, vulnerability scans and automated patching and all that. But the reality is, majority of data breaches are caused by employee mistakes, human mistakes. IBM found that 95% of data breaches are caused by employee mistakes. Other studies have found that, majority, whether that's 50 or 60, but the reality is these employees and these humans are making mistakes. So if an MSP truly wants to protect the client's network, they have to focus on where the data breaches are caused, and those are the employees. That's really important. And if you think about it, the firewalls and antivirus and monitoring, they're all like the locks or the alarm systems on a house. And if employees are opening the door and letting cyber criminals in, your technology is not going to help. So from a pure security point of view, you have to focus on employees, and employees need to be trained. But as you just mentioned, the other piece is commoditization and consolidation. It's hard to differentiate your MSP from the guy down the road. You're offering similar services, and when you talk about commoditization, that is driving prices of your services down. And I think that's a real problem. So, you need something to differentiate yourself, whether that's a vertical, healthcare or legal or financial services, or selling services that clients value and will pay more for. And clearly security is one of that. And if you look at security as a whole, there's technology, there's non-technologies, and that really is the focus on employees and employee awareness training. And the other piece of all of this is, if you focus on those employees and you can prove that these are your weak link, if you prove that to a client, I believe you can sell additional security services. So, that it really, by focusing in on employees and how they can make mistakes, you can sell your disaster recovery, your two-factor authentication, and all of those other technology stack along with your security services.
It actually ties in perfectly. I'm working on an article for IoTSSA right now that'll probably go up shortly, today or tomorrow, on layered security. Yep. Because it seems like the awareness training is that overall umbrella kind of for layered security to help be the back end. Getting the people trained on a variety of different technologies is great, but if they're not actually doing it or they're avoiding it, you just usurped all the investments that companies are making in their security technologies.
Exactly. And it has to be layered. Everybody wants to buy, that one box, that one firewall that protects everything, right? Let's just get done with the security. Same thing on HIPAA. Can we just do something and just be done with it? No, fortunately, it's ongoing. It is multi-layers, and it isn't something that you set and forget. It's something that you need to be concerned about and keep increasing the layers and make sure that you are truly protecting that client.
So to clarify, too, you have two offerings. HIPAA Secure Now is focused on the healthcare industry, but can you talk a little about Breach Secure Now? How does that differentiate?
Yeah, so Breach Secure Now is a channel-only white label solution. It is, for healthcare and non-healthcare, so basically across all verticals. It is specifically, it has security awareness training, simulated phishing, dark web scans, written security policies. We just came out with our employee vulnerability assessment, which really, it's pretty interesting. We give every employee an employee secure score, like a FICO credit score, but it measures their security strength. And then we have employees compete on a leaderboard like Fitbit or Peloton for that top spot with that employee secure score. And from a management view, we give every employee a risk level. So they always say employees are the weakest link, but you never know which one. Well, now you'll know that Betty at the front desk, she's your weak link, and she potentially is going to cause your next data breach. So, this is a solution that is channel only and, across all verticals. And our focus is really SMBs, as our clients.
Provide that extra support for the community that really needs it, that doesn't have it.
True. Exactly.
Got it. How much of an employee's time is required to complete these type of programs?
It's kind of interesting that, you talk about time, again, everybody, what's it going to take for my employees to go through this training? A core training is 45 minutes to an hour. But if you think about it, humans learn in a very interesting way, right? Think about middle school. You used to have lessons, you used to have quizzes, you used to have, video, movies, back then, the movies. And that's really what training is all about. The core training maybe is an hour, but you need to have ongoing training. We have ongoing weekly micro trainings. And these are like bite-sized 1 or 2 minute videos. And video is really key. You need to have this engagement and make it interesting with case studies and things where employees will find this interesting. You have to have phishing and ongoing phishing. So although from a time perspective, maybe it only takes an hour and a few minutes each week, but this is something that is ongoing, and you shouldn't, I always roll my eyes when I hear the question of how long will it take, because this is really something that needs to continuously happen. And it's got to be something that it's not too time consuming, but this is something that probably will go on for the next 5 years if you engage a client. So in total amount of time, it's, you can add up the little bite-sized pieces, but, you really have to break each one into components. The other thing that you really want to think about is you want constant engagement. One of the things that we're coming out with is a phishing button in Outlook. So we want employees to be trained in the tool that they're using in Outlook. So they, I spotted that phishing email. I want to click that button. And then with EVA, our employee vulnerability assessment, we have constant engagement where employees are competing for that top spot. So, the time element is continuous, and it is, continuous engagement and interaction by employees.
I would assume that there's probably a little more time upfront getting acclimated to the system, and then it just becomes, not a small segment of the day or minuscule, but it takes less time. It's just part of their normal.
That's exactly it. The core training up front, 45 minutes to an hour, and then, weekly micro trainings, and then, interacting with our dashboard and all that. So it's, it definitely is more upfront, but then it continues, much smaller amount of time ongoing.
Yeah, when you consider the fact that, the vast majority of breaches are due to employee behavior, it seems like a pretty small investment.
It definitely, it always makes me scratch my head when there's, that clients, and I think we'll get into that more a little later, but when clients say, my employees don't need this training, I don't want to make the time investment. It's like, this is your business. You need to protect it, and that investment is critical.
Right. Well, I think back to, you talked about Merck. I started at Johnson & Johnson when I got out of college, and I remember back, this is dating myself, but we're looking back about 20 years. We took this type of training at Johnson & Johnson. So I know the healthcare industry was kind of ahead of the curve when it came to this. So it seems like it should be happening more often. And I had a big gap between the time I first took one and the time I've taken one more recently.
Yeah, it's interesting that you say that, because when I left Merck and started the MSP, I wanted to take that enterprise architecture and networking and bring it down to the SMB level, and that's enterprise. They train employees, right? And they focus on, they have written security policies, training, and now we're it's a lag, but now we're bringing that into the SMB market because it's critical. It is important to train those employees and find their weakness and make them a defense as opposed to just a weak link and someone that can cause a data breach. So, the enterprise leads with it, and then, people bring that down into the SMB market.
Makes perfect sense to me. Now as an MSP, going in and looking at their clients, what type of outcome can their clients expect, or should their clients expect from awareness training?
When we talk about awareness training, one of our philosophies is you have to not only train on an employee on the dangers of cyber criminals at work, but if you can get them to worry about their home network, their kids' pictures, their kids' graduation, their tax returns, what you get is part of the outcome is you get employees that are very, much more sophisticated, much more, aware of potential harm that could happen to them or their business. I talk to a lot of partners, and they say, our users, they'll click on anything. They don't care. Employees, they do care. They don't want to be the person that causes the data breach, but it has to be something that they feel is important to them. And so one of the outcomes is, you get very more sophisticated employees, and that's really important. The other major outcome is, I believe you can sell more security. All right. So, if you put employees through security awareness, and you can show that they still are a weakness, and no matter what we do, we can strengthen them as much as we can, but they potentially could cause a problem. They can click on a phishing email. They can introduce ransomware. You can sell additional security. You can sell your disaster recoveries and your data backups and your two-factor authentications and all of those pieces. So that's a big outcome. One, you get more sophisticated employees, but I believe you sell additional security by leading with security, employee security awareness. So
it's deepening their defenses, basically, through structure as well as the personnel side.
Absolutely, and it's critical. That's critical that happens.
Well, and I know we touched on this a little bit, but can you walk us through what is the role that MSPs play in the awareness training programs?
I guess the most critical is selling the need. All right, I would love to say, all SMPs know they need to train their employees. That's not the case. It's really important to sell the need, to convince a client this is a problem, that security on a whole is something you need to worry about, because SMBs, historically have not worried about security too much, but to show that the risks and to prove to an SMB that they need to worry about this. The other big role is assessing employees, administering the program, finding employees that are a weak link, that could be an issue, and training them more and making them stronger. You think about it, it's like technical vulnerabilities, right? MSPs are very good at running scans, finding weak systems and patching them. Well, employees are the same way. You want to find which ones are weak and you want to patch them. And the only way to really patch them is to train them and to fish them and to do all the things that you need to do to take that weak link and make it stronger. So, that's a key role that an MSP will play. And then finally is, talking to a client and letting them understand their risks and improvements, part of, quarterly business reviews, bringing security as a whole, but employee security awareness training and results to the attention of that SMB. I think that's a major role. So an MSP plays a lot of important roles in not only introducing it, administering it, but then discussing the results and next steps with their clients.
So the QBR is an excellent point too, Art. But what type of information is in the reports that an MSP will get that they can deliver to their clients?
So I was talking about the employee vulnerability assessment. That the employee secure score. I mean, that is a great report to show. Look at your employees. Here's the trend of each employee. They're either getting better or getting worse. Here's where they compete. Here's your overall score and risk level from an organization. But here's each employee. Here's the risk level. Here's why they're a high risk. This Betty loves to click on phishing emails, and she's been involved in dark web breaches. She's going to be targeted, and she's really bad. So you take all of those analytics and you discuss that with the client. It's something before it used to be, you go through training, you get a certificate, you're done. Now there's lots of analytics that you can take a look at each employee, show the weakness or the strength, and discuss next steps. What do we do about this? If we can't get this employee stronger, then let's make sure that we have technology that may protect against an employee mistake. So it really engages the clients in a conversation around security, focusing on those employees.
So what types of things do you see that happen to, whether it be bad Betty or bad Bobby, as far as employees? What type of best practices are you seeing for addressing those? You mentioned take some appropriate actions. What are you seeing partners do?
I mean, two of the major things that we see is ransomware, obviously, and then business email compromise, where employees are being tricked to either send out W-2s or confidential information, or to wire money or pay invoices that aren't real. So what we see a lot of is, okay, how do we protect against ransomware? Well, we have to upgrade our antivirus to the next generation rollback technology, ransomware technology. But we need disaster recovery. We need those data backup, disaster recovery, those pieces, and then also when we look at business email compromise, we need procedures to make sure that employees are use almost like two-factor authentication before they transfer any money or any sensitive information. They get a second person to approve that. So we see that driving, technology, procedures. The other pieces, part of all of this is the dark web scans that we have in dark web data, showing that employees have these passwords and the password reuse is rampant. So if an employee had a password breached in LinkedIn or Dropbox, it could be the same password they're using on Office 365 or to guard, to protect their network. So we see two-factor authentication and those solutions happening because that's one of the best ways of protecting against password reuse. And so again, you see a lot of technology comes out of showing employee weakness.
I see. One of the biggest advantages MSPs have when they employ properly is the ability to get more time with their clients, whether it's usually the decision makers, but it seems like these type of discussions would be of high value and help MSPs to promote, here's what we're doing, here's a plan we can put together, and not just to gain more budget, but that's a good thing to gain more budget.
Absolutely.
To get involved in long range plans for a client and ties them in a little tighter too.
And what you become is, this is talking about business risk. I mean, this is true risk to the business, right? And, a lot of MSPs love technology. I love technology. We want to talk about the sexiest new firewall. Clients, they don't really care that much. They want to buy a firewall and, it's going to protect me. But this allows an MSP to talk about business risk and things that we need to do to lower that risk. So I totally agree with you that this allows an MSP to have, strategic conversations with the client. And that's important. And that makes you a trusted advisor. Everybody uses that word, but you don't want to be that commodity. You want to be that person that client values and trusts and knows that, you're looking at all aspects of their business.
Right. Now, with spear phishing and some of the other issues, do you find like executives or those in a position of, financial, like the CFO or the accountant team, do they treat employees somewhat differently as far as a security perspective?
I think that's what the challenge is, to make them understand they should treat those employees differently. And one of the best part of doing dark web scans is not only showing passwords, but all of the different data that's out there. Look, the phone numbers and addresses and job functions and all of this stuff, and explaining to that client, that's what spear phishing is all about. Look at all this data. And they're going to target your CFO. They're going to target your human resources. So it's the MSP's role to take this data and explain it to an SMB, to a client, and what could happen. And let's focus on these high risk jobs or departments, and let's make sure that one, we use technologies to protect them, awareness to protect them, and then also put policies and procedures in place. So, I think a successful program will, allow the client to understand the risks that different areas of their company present, and then take steps to protect that. But in the beginning, I don't think that happens. So I think, we were talking about the role of the MSP. That is a huge role of identifying those different high-risk areas and coming up with steps to protect, and to lower those risks.
So progression kind of discussions you can have with clients. Excellent points.
Absolutely. And those high-value discussions, the interesting part about employee mistakes, business owners know employees make mistakes, and maybe they don't realize that it'll lead to data breaches, but, employees make mistakes. They say something to a customer that could be wrong. They don't show up for work. So business owners realize that, I love my employees, but they do make mistakes. And it's a natural progression if, a mistake could lead to a data breach. And these are higher level conversations, especially when you start to combine employee and security and things that risk and steps to lower risk.
Certainly. That makes perfect sense. So what type of objections can MSPs expect with awareness training?
Yeah. It's very similar objections when talking about any security. SMBs, they hear about data breaches, they know about the targets on the Home Depots, but they don't believe that they're going to be targeted. We hear we're too small. We don't have important data. No one's coming after us. My employees don't have the time to go through the training, and I'm worried about the costs. But the reality is, it's they say all of these things because they don't believe that they're going to be a target. Once you prove to an SMB and to a client that they are at risk, then they change their tune almost immediately. What can we do about this? I see all this dark web data. What do we do about it? How do I protect against these risks? The other thing that I don't think MSPs do themselves a favor is because they use examples of Target and Home Depot, ransomware at hospitals, and SMBs don't relate to that. And the key is to get a client, give them examples that they can relate to. If they're a small accounting firm, show other small accounting firms that have had those breaches. Don't use numbers. Oh, it's going to, cyber crime is going to be $1.3 trillion. That doesn't resonate with a client. So, those objections that we hear are because they don't believe that they're at risk. If you can prove that they are at risk, it's so much easier to sell security awareness training, to sell, managed security services, to sell technologies. And, those objections are similar across all industries and verticals. But once you can prove it, it lowers the barrier, and it's a lot easier to sell all different types of security to that client.
Yeah, I know that the enterprise examples are one thing. We hear that caution a lot. I actually saw last week, and I just pulled it up here, Colorado Timberline is a good example. This is a small business based in Denver that was hit by ransomware that went out of business. You don't see that a lot. You don't see them in the press of, here's a small business that happened. You hear numbers, but you can't make it as personal as doing an assessment, bringing it back into their own backyard.
Exactly. And the more that you can give examples that client can relate to, whether it looks like their vertical, looks like their amount of employees, looks like something that could happen to them, the more that they'll believe that it can happen. So that's a great example. And one of the things we're doing is for our partners is we're pulling more and more of those examples together and helping them with marketing and content to prove to clients that you do have to worry about this stuff.
Makes perfect sense. So, like in other objections, Costa comes up. If they throw that up, that's probably a screen for other concerns.
Absolutely. A lot of our partners bundle the training in with their core service, and they don't charge for it. And there's still objections, right? Again, it is because that client doesn't believe they have to worry about this. And that is the biggest obstacle. And it's kind of funny because the more that you read about cybercrime, that SMBs are being targeted because they're pretty easy targets. Unfortunately, SMBs don't believe they're targets. So no wonder that, we have so much cyber crime. So it definitely is cost usually isn't a barrier. Security training is not that expensive. You're not talking about, $50,000, expense. You're talking about, something that is definitely affordable, but it's, if the client doesn't perceive the risk, it doesn't matter what you charge, they won't move forward. So I think that is definitely, it tells a tale if they are worried about costs, that they really just aren't really worried about the risk itself.
So it sounds like you're saying that most of the cybersecurity training is sold through MSPs as part of their package, their security bundle, as opposed to standalone.
Definitely. We see it as being bundled in, included as the next level of managed security services. But usually we don't see it as a standalone service. It's something that, and I think that's the way to do it, because that is part. You are selling security and protecting the network. This is a component of it. If you're selling managed security services, then there's advanced levels of that employee training, but to go along with all of the other advanced services that you're doing. So some of our partners do sell it standalone, but that they're in the minority. Most of those partners bundle that in with their services.
Makes perfect sense. So, what resources does SecureNow offer its MSP partners?
Yep. So, as I mentioned, we are a channel-only white label solution, which our partners love. They can brand it as their own. We have our unlimited client training, unlimited dark web scans, unlimited phishing subscription. So that's a great way to roll out training to all of an MSP's clients to use it as a prospecting tool. That's one of the things we didn't really talk about, but that unlimited clients dark web phishing and training subscription is a great prospecting tool that you can go and start working with a prospect before they're one of your clients and start getting your foot in the door. Think about MSP services. As an MSP, it's hard to sell MSP services because it's all or nothing, right? It's hard to convince a client to move from this one provider to you, but because they're not going to let you back up their network or patch their network. So how do you actually prove that you're a company that they should work with? Security awareness training is one of the ways in, starting to train those employees and and our employee vulnerability assessment. So that's one of our resources that we have. And then our employee vulnerability assessment, as I was mentioning, is an exciting new tool. It kind of changes the face of security. That we're seeing lots of uptake and lots of engagement by MSPs as well as their clients. And then we're coming out with our security prospecting toolkit, where we're taking all of our tools that I mentioned and putting marketing and content around that. So you can use dark web scans to set up meetings. We're providing slide decks so you can actually have that meeting, and moving towards phishing campaigns and training that moves you towards employee vulnerability assessments, and then eventually security risk assessments, and then hopefully getting them as a client or upselling that client to advanced security services. So, we have a whole bunch of tools, marketing, content focused on employees. And, our partners are really excited about that, especially that it is white labeled, channel only, no published pricing, and that they have a lot of margin that they can charge for those services.
That's something MSPs love to hear.
They definitely do. They definitely do.
Very good. Well, unfortunately, the clock is telling me it's time to wrap up. Do you have any final thoughts or insight you'd like to share with the Secure Connections audience, Art?
Yeah, I'm just happy to be here. We're excited to continue to work with MSPs. I'm thrilled that security awareness training is really starting to pick up. That MSPs are starting to see the value of that, and they're starting to see how employee security can lead to growing their business and selling additional services and make them and differentiate them. So I like where we're going, and from an industry, I think this is going to be something that it becomes more and more important as the next 2 years or so. And cybercrime is not going away, and they are going to focus on SMBs, and it's a great way for an MSP to differentiate themselves, grow their business, and really help their clients.
Excellent. On behalf of IOTSSA, I'd like to thank Art Gross of Secure Now for sharing his insight today, and thank you for listening. Be sure to check out all the great channel-exclusive cybersecurity content on the association's website at IoTSSA.com. Have a productive and secure day, and we look forward to bringing you another great podcast next week.
Take care.